We were both seekers in this strange world, grappling with our demons. She had painted the pain of her past, the loss of her twin brother in a tragic accident, while I had buried mine under layers of skepticism. I could see the weight of her, grief mirrored in my own, a burden we both carried, perhaps even unknowingly, into this moment. Suddenly the shadows thickened, swirling like a tempest around the figure at the altar. "You fear what you do not understand," it proclaimed, "but to grasp the truth, you must confront your fears." The air crackled with energy, and I felt a jolt run through me, awakening long dormant memories of my father's disappointment, the crushing weight of unfulfilled expectations. I struggled to breathe as the past clawed its way back into my consciousness. Clara turned towards me, her expression shifting from defiance to something softer, almost vulnerable. "Martin," she whispered, "we can't let it control us. This is our chance to confront it." I nodded, my mind racing. If this entity was indeed a manifestation of our collective fears, then perhaps we held the power to change the narrative. But as I wrestled with my own doubts, the church quaked, and the candles flared violently, casting the shadows into grotesque forms. In that moment, I felt a shift, an unspoken alliance forming between Clara and me. We were both trapped in this labyrinth of belief, drawn into the heart of a mystery that threatened to unravel everything we thought we knew. But as the voice from the altar called out, demanding our attention, I realized the true danger lay not just in the shadows, but in the choices we would soon have to make. The congregation began to tremble, whispers of fear cascading through the pews. I could see Clara's resolve hardening as the weight of the moment pressed down on us. This was no longer just a quest for knowledge, it was a confrontation with our deepest fears, and as I met her gaze, I knew we would have to face whatever was coming together. But before we could act, the lights flickered one last time, plunging the church into darkness, leaving us to grapple with the abyss that awaited us. In the suffocating darkness, panic clawed at my throat. I could hear Clara's breath quickening beside me, and the low hum of the congregation transformed into a chorus of gasps and murmurs. My mind raced, frantically searching for a way to make sense of the chaos that had erupted around us. Just moments ago, we stood on the precipice of unveiling our fears, and now it felt as if the very ground beneath our feet had collapsed into a void. "Martin," Clara's voice pierced through the murk, snapping me back to reality. "We have to hold on to each other." I reached out instinctively, my fingers brushing against her arm. Her warmth was a lifeline in this disorienting abyss, a reminder that I wasn't alone in this madness. Suddenly, the voice returned, but it was no longer the deep, resonant tone that had echoed through the church. Now, it was fractured, splintered, into different pitches, each filled with a haunting familiarity. "You think you understand fear? You believe you can confront it? You are merely puppets of your own design." The words slithered into my mind, igniting a flicker of recognition that sent a shiver down my spine. I struggled to recall the details of my past, the moments that had shaped me into who I was today. Then it hit me. The shadow of my father loomed, larger than I had ever acknowledged. He had been a man of rigid beliefs, a man who dismissed weakness as a flaw, and I had spent my life trying to prove him wrong. The echoes of his disapproval reverberated within me, intertwining with the shadows now swirling around the church. "Think, Martin," I urged myself, grappling with the memories that surfaced like ghosts. What did he always say? I could hear it now, the sharpness of his voice cutting through the years. "You'll never amount to anything if you let your fears control you." The words felt like a knife, twisting deeper into my consciousness. As I stood there, an unsettling realization washed over me. This entity wasn't merely a manifestation of our fears, it was woven from the very fabric of our pasts, our regrets, and our hidden traumas. I glanced at Clara. Her expression was one of dawning horror, as if she too was unraveling the threads that held her together. "It knows us," she whispered, and I could hear the tremor in her voice. "It knows everything. Just..." Then, The lights flickered back on with a blinding intensity, illuminating the church in a stark, harsh glow. But the scene before me sent my heart racing anew. Clara was no longer standing beside me. Instead, she was positioned at the altar, her hands raised as if in a trance, her eyes glazed over. "Clara!" I shouted, but my voice was swallowed by an unseen force, the congregation frozen in awe or terror. What if the very fabric of reality was woven by a deity crafted from the thoughts and fears of mortals? This question haunted me as I stood on the corner of Maple and Fifth, staring into the depths of the old church that had stood there, resolute yet crumbling for over a century. It was a sanctuary for the lost, a place where faith and desperation intertwined, much like the lives of those who sought refuge there. I, Martin Hale, had spent countless nights wandering these streets of New Haven, Connecticut, searching for answers to questions I feared to voice aloud. As the sun dipped below the horizon, a chill crept through the air, wrapping around me like a shroud. The flickering streetlights cast elongated shadows that danced ominously upon the pavement, echoing my own inner turmoil. I had always been a skeptic, a man of science, yet there was an allure to the supernatural that tugged at the edges of my consciousness. The stories whispered among the townsfolk about SCP-343, an entity claiming to be God, had become an obsession, beckoning me deeper into the unknown. Was it a manifestation of humanity's collective beliefs, or a clever ruse designed to exploit our vulnerabilities? The first signs of conflict emerged the evening I decided to confront the myth. As I stepped into the church, the air thick with incense and something more ephemeral, I felt a shift. The atmosphere buzzed with an energy I couldn't quite grasp. The congregation was sparse, yet their faces were etched with a mix of reverence and fear. I approached an old man, his eyes clouded with age, but sharp with insight. "You believe in SCP-343, don't you?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He nodded slowly, his gaze drifting toward the altar, where the flickering candles illuminated a figure cloaked in shadows. Suddenly, the candles flickered violently, casting strange shapes upon the walls. A murmur swept through the congregation, a shared fear that something was about to unfold. I could feel it too, a palpable tension that gripped my heart. In that moment, the church felt alive, as if the very stones whispered secrets of the past, drawing upon my own buried memories of loss and regret. I had grown up in these neighborhoods where dreams often faded like the paint on the old houses, where my father's ambitions crumbled into dust. His ambition had become my burden, and the weight of it pressed down on me with each passing day. As I scanned the room, I felt an inexplicable connection to the stories that lingered in the air, the tales of people who had come here seeking solace, only to find themselves lost in a labyrinth of belief and despair. It was a cycle I understood all too well, one that mirrored my own struggles. But as I stood there, grappling with my own demons, I couldn't shake the feeling that something more sinister was at play. The flickering lights cast a sinister glow, and the shadows seemed to stretch, warping reality itself. But when night fell, something inexplicable happened. As I stood in the dimly lit church, my heart raced, and the air buzzed with an energy that felt almost sentient. The flickering candles cast dancing shadows on the walls, and I was acutely aware of the congregation's collective breath, holding in anticipation. I turned my focus back to the old man beside me, who had remained silent, his eyes fixed on the altar. "What's about to happen?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. He looked at me, a knowing glint in his eyes that sent chills down my spine. "It's the night of reckoning," he replied cryptically. "Tonight, he will speak." Before I could process his words, the figure at the altar seemed to shift, the shadows coiling around it like smoke. A deep voice reverberated through the room, resonating not just in the air but within the very core of my being. "Mortals of New Haven, why do you seek me?" The voice was both soothing and terrifying, a melody that struck a chord of fear within me. I glanced at the congregation. Some knelt, tears streaming down their faces, while others recoiled in horror. I felt the ground beneath me tremble, an unsettling reminder that something was shifting, not just in this church, but in the fabric of reality itself. As the voice continued, I caught sight of a woman on the other side of the aisle. Her name was Clara, a local artist whose work had always intrigued me. I'd seen her wandering these streets, her sketchbook tucked under her arm, forever capturing the essence of our town. She rose slowly, her long hair cascading over her shoulders like a dark waterfall. "What do you want from us?" she demanded. Her voice steady, but I saw the fear lurking in her eyes. "What do you want from me?" The intensity of her gaze pulled me in, making me forget the chaos around us. The voice paused, as if contemplating her question, and in that silence, I felt a deep connection with Clara. The shadows coalesced around her, consuming her in a swirling vortex of darkness. The entity laughed, a sound that echoed with a sinister familiarity, and in that moment I realized this was not just a night of reckoning, it was a night of revelation. I was being drawn into a game far more complex than I had ever imagined, and the stakes were higher than I could bear. "Your fears will bind you, Martin," the voice taunted, its power palpable. "And now, you must choose. Will you save her, or will you embrace the darkness within yourself?" I felt the weight of my past pressing down on me, the choices I had made surfacing like specters from the depths of my memory. I had to act, but the question loomed larger than ever. What if the truth I sought was more terrifying than the darkness itself? The tension crackled in the air as I raced to decipher the twisted path ahead, knowing that every step I took could lead me deeper into the unknown. I took a shaky step forward, my heart pounding like a war drum in my chest. The air felt thick, almost viscous, as I fought against the pull of the shadows surrounding Clara. "I won't let you take her," I shouted into the void, my voice raw with desperation. The entity's laughter echoed back, a twisted mockery of my resolve. I glanced around, desperate for help, but the congregation remained frozen, their faces pale and eyes wide, as if they were watching a horrific play unfold. I caught sight of Mr. Thompson, the elderly priest, who had guided us through our fears in the weeks leading to this night. He stood at the back, his hands trembling. "Martin," he finally managed to shout, breaking the spell. "You must confront it. Look within yourself." His words struck me like a bolt of lightning. I realized then that this wasn't just about Clara or the shadows threatening to consume her. It was about me, my fears, my past, and my unwillingness to face the truth. I closed my eyes for a moment, summoning the courage I had buried for far too long. "I know what you are," I called out, my voice steadier now. "You're born from my regrets, my failures. You can't take her." The shadows around Clara twisted and writhed, as if responding to my declaration. I saw her eyes flicker, a hint of recognition breaking through the haze. "Martin," she cried, her voice breaking through the chaos, "fight it! Don't let it win!" I took another step, feeling the ground beneath me shift with each movement. The entity roared in indignation, its form rippling with rage. "You think you can defy me?" it hissed, the myriad voices swirling like a tempest. "You are nothing without your fears." "Maybe," I shot back, my anger igniting a fire within me. "But I'm more than just my fears. I'm not my father's son. I'm not defined by his expectations." The shadows recoiled slightly, and I felt a surge of power coursing through me. I was no longer just a puppet. I was the one pulling the strings. Suddenly, Clara's voice broke through the darkness again. "Remember why you're fighting, Martin." Her words wrapped around me like a warm embrace, reminding me of all the moments we had shared, the laughter, the dreams, the love that had flourished despite the darkness. With renewed determination, I stretched out my hand toward her. "Clara, hold on! I'm coming!" I took a deep breath and plunged into the shadows, feeling their cold tendrils wrap around me. The entity screamed, a cacophony of voices rising in protest, but I pressed forward, propelled by the memory of Clara's smile and the belief that we could face this together. As I reached her, my fingers brushed against her wrist, and a jolt of energy surged through us. The shadows screamed, swirling violently, but I refused to let them take her. "We're stronger than this," I declared, feeling the truth of my words resonate deep within my core. And just like that, the darkness began to unravel, revealing the flickering light of hope. I held on to Clara tighter, determined to pull her out of the abyss, ready to confront whatever lay ahead, knowing that together we could forge our own destiny. But as the shadows began to recede, a new figure emerged from the darkness, one I had not expected. The realization hit me like a wave, a revelation that could change everything. As the shadows shrank away, a figure emerged, a ghostly silhouette that sent a chill racing down my spine. I recognized him immediately, my father. His face was a mask of disappointment and anger, a haunting reminder of the burdens I had carried for so long. "You think you've won?" he spat, his voice cold and cutting through the air like a blade. "This isn't over, Martin." I tightened my grip on Clara, who looked between me and the apparition, her expression a mix of fear and confusion. "What does he mean?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't know," I admitted, my heart racing. The entity had been vanquished, but this new threat felt just as sinister. My father's presence loomed large, a specter of unresolved conflicts and painful memories. With every step he took toward us, I felt the weight of my past pressing down harder. "You're still a failure just like always," he taunted, his voice echoing with every line of hurt that had been etched into my soul. "No," I shouted back, my voice rising above the darkness. "I'm done letting you define me." The clarity of my declaration sent an electric jolt through the air. The shadows flickered, as if wavering in the face of my defiance. But as I stepped forward, ready to confront my father, I noticed the congregation beginning to stir. Mr. Thompson approached, his face lined with concern. "Martin, remember, you're not alone. You've faced the shadows before, and you can do it again." His words reminded me of the weight of responsibility I carried, not just for Clara, but for everyone who had believed in me. I could feel their eyes on us, the support of those who had walked this perilous path alongside me. "Clara, hold on to that light," I urged, my gaze never leaving the figure of my father. "We face this together." As Clara nodded, a warm glow enveloped us, pushing back against the encroaching darkness. "You can't control me anymore," I declared, stepping into the light. Suddenly, my father's form flickered, revealing the cracks in his facade. I could see the fear beneath his anger, the vulnerability he had always hidden, but just as I felt the tide turning, the ground rumbled beneath us, and the shadows recoiled with renewed fury. "This isn't the end, Martin," my father shouted, as he dissolved into a wisp of darkness, leaving behind an unsettling silence. The congregation erupted into chaos, stunned and uncertain. Clara collapsed into my arms, and I felt the tremor of her fear. "What just happened?" she asked, her breath shaky. "I don't know," I replied, my heart still racing. But as I looked around, I could see the aftermath of our confrontation written on the faces of those who had witnessed it. Mr. Thompson seemed older, wearier, and I could tell that the shadows now haunted him as well. The mystery of what lay ahead lingered in the air, thick and unresolved. I felt the weight of my scars, both physical and emotional, etching themselves deeper into my being. Yet beneath the fear, there was a flicker of hope, a sense of resilience that urged me forward. As we gathered ourselves, I glanced back at the lingering shadows, searching for answers that remained just out of reach. I knew this battle had only begun, and somewhere deep within the darkness, I sensed that my father's spirit was not the only thing left unresolved. "Let's go. Home," I finally said, but a part of me understood that home would never feel the same again. With Clara by my side, I vowed to uncover the truth of the shadows that still clung to us, even as the congregation began to disperse, each person carrying their own scars, their own mysteries. And as we walked away from that place of confrontation, I couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows were still watching, waiting for the right moment to strike again. The journey was far from over. As we stepped away from the remnants of that haunting encounter, I felt the weight of uncertainty settle around us like a fog. The path ahead was shrouded in mystery, each step echoing with the unresolved specters of my past. Clara held my hand tightly, her warmth grounding me amid the chill of my father's lingering presence. I wondered if I had truly defeated him, or if this was merely a delay in the inevitable. The shadows, once banished, seemed to ripple in the corners of my mind, teasing me with the possibility of their return. The congregation had dispersed, each person carrying their burdens, yet I felt an unshakable connection to them. They had faced their own demons, and yet we were all left standing on the precipice of an unknown future. "We did what we could," Clara whispered, breaking my reverie. But her voice held a tremor, suggesting that both of us understood the fragility of our victory. The air felt thick with anticipation, as if the world itself was holding its breath. What if my father's departure was not the end, but the beginning of a deeper struggle? I couldn't shake the feeling that I was still being watched, that the shadows were merely biding their time. The unresolved conflict within me mirrored the turmoil of the world around us, a cycle repeating itself in an endless loop. As we walked away, I glanced back one last time. The gathering place stood silent, but the shadows loomed large, whispering promises of return. My heart raced with both fear and defiance, and I knew that while today felt like a victory, the battle for my soul and perhaps the souls of many was far from over. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Share with your friends so they can also embark on this mystery-filled adventure. Leave a comment below telling us your favorite part or what kind of ending you'd like to see in a future story.